The Bodhisattva Maitreya addressed the Buddha and said, World-honored one, how do bodhisattvas, supported upon their intense cultivation of quietude and vision, realize supreme awakening? The Buddha answered Bodhisattva Maitreya and said, Good son, having already attained quietude and vision, the bodhisattvas support themselves upon the 7 Suchnesses. With minds well concentrated upon the doctrine they have heard and pondered, within themselves they truly reflect upon the nature of suchness as it has been well considered, well examined, and well established. Because of their reflection upon suchness, they are able to abandon the appearances of all subtle images, not to mention gross images. Good son, these subtle images refer to images of the appropriation of thinking, images of experience, images of conscious construction, images of defilement and purification, images of the interior, images of the exterior, images of both interior and exterior, images that one must act for the benefit of sentient beings, images of true wisdom, images of suchness, images of the 4 truths of suffering, its origin, its destruction, and the path, images of the conditioned, images of the unconditioned, images of eternity, images of transience, images of the nature of suffering and change, images of the unchanging, images of the different characteristics of the conditioned, images of the identical characteristics of the conditioned, the image that there is a universal just because one knows a universal, images of the no-self of persons, and images of the no-self of things. They are able to abandon all thoughts that appear in their minds, and because they continually abide in such an activity, over a period of time, they cultivate a mind to counteract all entanglements, obfuscations, and distractions. Afterwards, they internally engender penetrating discernment in regard to each of the 7 suchnesses, for this is the path of insight. Because of this attainment, they are said to have entered the assured status of a bodhisattva exempt from rebirth, for they are born into the household of the Tathagata, and, entering into the first stage, they are able to enjoy the superior good qualities of this stage. During this initial period, because they have attained quietude and vision, they have already attained the 2 objects, the objects accompanied by images for reflection, and the objects that are not accompanied by images for reflection. For it is at this point that they attain the path of insight. They also realize as the object of their understanding the limits of the phenomenal. Then, afterwards, in all the stages, they cultivate the path of meditation while attentively reflecting upon these 3 kinds of objects. Just like a man who removes a large wedge by means of a small wedge, so these bodhisattvas banish internal images by the method of relying upon this meditation as the small wedge to remove the large wedge of all their images. All images that pertain to defilement are abolished, and, being so abolished, weakness is also abolished. Since they destroy forever that weakness in all its images, afterwards, in all the stages, they gradually refine their thoughts as one who refines gold, until they realize supreme awakening, until they realize the objective they set out to accomplish. Good son, thus, because these bodhisattvas have well cultivated meditation within themselves, they realize supreme awakening. The Bodhisattva Maitreya addressed the Buddha and said, World-honored one, how does this cultivation of meditation produce the great majesty of a bodhisattva? Good son, when the bodhisattvas become aware of the 6 supports, they are able to produce that great majesty of a bodhisattva. The first is that they know well the arising of thought. The second is that they know well the abiding of thought. The third is that they know well the departure of thought. The fourth is that they know well the increasing of thought. The fifth is that they know well the diminution of thought. The sixth is that they know well the methods. They know well the arising of thoughts, for they truly know the differences that engender thought in its 16 activities. And this is what is meant by knowing well the arising of thought. The 16 activities of thought are as follows. The first is the arising of conscious construction as the unconscious foundational receptacle, that is, the appropriating consciousness. The second is the arising of conscious construction in tandem with its numerous different objects, that is, the imaginative thought consciousness that immediately apprehends all the object realms of material forms, etc. The understanding which immediately apprehends internal and external objects, or, alternately, the imaginative thought consciousness which, in an instant, a single moment, enters into concentration and sees many Buddha lands and many Tathagatas. The third is the arising of conscious construction objectified in small images, that is, thinking bound to the world of desire. The fourth is the arising of conscious construction objectified in large images, that is, thinking bound to the world of material form. The fifth is the arising of conscious construction objectified in unlimited images, that is, thinking bound to infinite space and infinite consciousness. The sixth is the arising of conscious construction objectified in subtle images, that is, thinking bound neither to conceptualization nor to non-conceptualization. The eighth is the arising of conscious construction in no images, that is, transcendent thinking and objectless thinking. The ninth is the arising of conscious construction activated in tandem with suffering, that is, the thinking of the inhabitants of the hells. The 10th is the arising of conscious construction in tandem with the complex of sensation, that is, thinking activated through desire. The 11th is the arising of conscious construction activated in tandem with joy, that is, the thinking of the first two meditations. The 12th is the arising of conscious construction activated in tandem with happiness, that is, the thinking of the third meditation. The 13th is the arising of conscious construction activated in tandem with neither suffering nor happiness, that is, thinking from the fourth meditation to neither conceptualization nor non-conceptualization. The 14th is the arising of conscious construction in tandem with defilement, that is, the thinking associated with passions and passionate inclinations. The 15th is the arising of conscious construction in tandem with goodness, that is, thinking associated with faith, etc. The 16th is the arising of conscious construction in tandem with morally neutral states, that is, thinking unassociated with either that faith or that passion. How do they know well the abiding of thought? This means that they truly know the suchness of understanding. How do they know well the departure of thought? This means that they truly know deliverance from the two bonds, those of images and those of weakness, for such knowing enables them to lead their thinking away from them. How do they know well the increase of thought? When they truly know the thoughts that are able to counteract the bonds of images and the bonds of weakness, for at the moment when those images and weaknesses increase and accumulate, they attain an increase and accumulation of countering thoughts. This is what is meant by knowing the increase of thought. How do they know well the decrease of thought? They truly know the images that have to be counteracted, the weak, defiled thoughts. And when they discard them or lessen them, this is a rejecting and a decreasing. This is what is meant by knowing the decrease of thought. How do they know well methods? They truly know the liberations, the realms of mastery, and the realms of totality, either when cultivating them or terminating that cultivation. Good son, this is how the bodhisattvas produce the great majesty of a bodhisattva. Whether they have already done so, are going to do so, or are presently doing so. The Bodhisattva Maitreya addressed the Buddha and said, World-honored one, as you have taught, in cessation without remainder, all sensations without remainder are forever destroyed. Which are these sensations that are forever destroyed? Good son, in sum, there are two kinds of sensations destroyed without remainder. The first are the sensations of bodily weakness, while the second are the sensations of the objects that are their results. There are four kinds of sensations of bodily weakness: the sensations of bodies of material form, the sensations of formless bodies, the sensations of weakness already brought to term as result, and the sensations of weakness not yet brought to term as result. Sensations already brought to term as result refer to present sensations, while sensations not yet brought to term as result refer to the objects of sensation to be caused in the future by those present sensations. Sensations of objects that result from the sensations of bodily weakness are also of four kinds: sensations of place, sensations of requisites, sensations of enjoyment, and sensations of romantic leanings. In cessation with remainder, all sensations not yet brought to terms as result have already been destroyed, for there is generally present the experiencing of sensations born from wisdom contact, which counteract the experiencing both of those sensations not yet brought to term as result and of those sensations already brought to term as result. Those two kinds of sensation are already destroyed, and one experiences only that sensation born of wisdom contact. But in cessation without remainder, at the time of final cessation, even this kind of wisdom sensation is eternally destroyed. Thus it is said that in the realm of cessation without remainder, all sensations are destroyed without remainder. Thus the world-honored one finished his explanation. He again addressed the Bodhisattva Maitreya and said, "Excellent, excellent, good son, that you have been able to question the Tathagata about the accomplishment of the most pure path of wondrous centering. You yourself have already certainly attained utmost skill, and I already have proclaimed for you the path of wondrous centering, perfect and most pure. The awakened ones of the past or the future have already taught or will teach a like teaching. All good sons and good daughters must, with diligent effort, cultivate it." Then the world-honored one recited verses to emphasize his meaning. If one acts in an unrestrained manner in regard to centering as presented in this doctrine, one will lose its great benefit. But if, relying upon this doctrine and centering, one correctly cultivates and practices it, one will attain the great awakening. If, looking to what they can attain, some reject and criticize this doctrine and take their view to be the way to realize doctrine, Maitreya, they will be as far from centering as is the sky from the earth. Obdurate people who do not work to benefit beings, once enlightened, do not bother about benefiting sentient beings. But the wise do act for others until the end of the eons, and they attain supreme, undefiled joy. If one enunciates doctrine from desire, although one be said to have rejected desire, one will revert to desire. Thus, fools, having attained the priceless doctrine, turn back and wander about begging alms. Rejecting contentious quarreling and abandoning attachment to opinion, engender superior effort. In order to deliver gods and men, you must study this centering. At that time, the Bodhisattva Maitreya addressed the Buddha and said, "World-honored one, how should we designate this teaching in this doctrinal discourse on explicating underlying intent? How should we revere it?" The Buddha answered the Bodhisattva Maitreya and said, "Good son, it is designated the teaching on the explicit meaning of centering, and you should revere it as such." When this teaching on the explicit meaning of centering was preached in the assembly, 600,000 sentient beings attained supreme awakening. 300,000 word-hearers attained purification of their doctrine undefiled and unpolluted in regard to this doctrine. 150,000 word hearers exhausted their contaminants, and their thoughts attained liberation. And 75,000 bodhisattvas came to attend to expansive centering.